This is the story of WATARU Misaka, the first player of color to play in the NBA. Welcome to our new series, NextShark Sports Originals, where we highlight AAPI excellence in sports you may not know about. On November 13th, 1947, just 7 months after Jackie Robinson made his debut for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Wataru, or Watt as he was also known, a Japanese American, made history when he suited up for the New York Knicks, making him the first player of color to ever suit up for a professional basketball team. For Watt to do this in 1947, when the US as a country was coming off the heels of World War II, the Pearl Harbor attacks, and Japanese American internment camps, makes his accomplishment seem that much more extraordinary. But there was so much more to Watt than basketball. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's backtrack a bit. Wataru Misaka was born and raised in Ogden, Utah. In 1939, his father, a barber, passed away when Misaka was just 15 years old. Struggling to make ends meet, Watt worked on a farm to help support his family while simultaneously becoming a superstar athlete in high school. He did it all. He ran hurdles, he played baseball and football, he played point guard. He led his school to consecutive state basketball titles. Then he went on to Weber Junior College and led the basketball team to a pair of national titles in 1942 and 1943. While these athletic achievements were grand, that wasn't really the case for life outside of basketball if you were a Japanese American like Misaka. Even prior to the events of Pearl Harbor, Watt could feel the ever-distinct omnipresence of prejudice. Misaka was a freshman at Weber when the Pearl Harbor attacks occurred. It was a Sunday. In a 2005 interview, Misaka recalled, "I tried to go to school Monday morning. I wasn't the only Japanese American, but they sent all the Japanese Americans home. I don't know if it was for 2 days or 3 days or what, but we didn't go to school for those few days." Since Japanese Americans in Utah were spared from internment, Misaka found himself in a very surreal position of being a star basketball player at Weber, while thousands of Japanese Americans were relocated to internment camps as a result of FDR's Executive Order 9066. After 2 years at Weber, Misaka found himself at the University of Utah, where he kept his winning ways and led his team to their first NCAA basketball championship in 1944. Watt shined in this game brighter than the grandiose lights of Madison Square Garden, the mecca of basketball. And not long after the championship game, Misaka was drafted. No, not by a pro basketball team, not yet at least. He was drafted by none other than the US military. Watt was initially assigned to the 442nd Infantry Unit, a unit that was comprised almost entirely of Japanese Americans and the most decorated unit in US military history. That in and of itself is a pretty incredible story, especially when you consider that technically Watt served in the military with Mr. Miyagi, that is if Mr. Miyagi wasn't a fictional character, and then due to Watt's ability to speak Japanese, he was then moved from the 442nd to military intelligence. His time working in military intelligence included being sent to Hiroshima just 3 months after the atomic bomb had been dropped. He was given the thankless task of interviewing residents there in the aftermath of that destruction. Of that experience, Watt has said he learned a lot about the nature of people after visiting Hiroshima, which was actually the original hometown of his parents. After his military service was complete, Misaka returned to the University of Utah and in 1947 led them to the NIT title, which at the time was actually the more prestigious title than the NCAA championship. And once again, his winning ways led to him being drafted. Only this time, it wasn't the US military, it was the New York Knicks of the NBA, which at the time was known as the Basketball Association of America. He went to training camp with the team and his pro career was underway. Now this is the part of the story where you would love to hear that Watt won another championship, but this time at the pro level, but unfortunately that just wasn't the case. Watt only played 3 games for the Knicks before he was cut. Watt had played basketball since he was in junior high and save for 2 years of military service, hadn't stopped since. But then, just like that, at age 24, there were no more competitive basketball games for Watt Misaka to play in. His professional basketball career was over before it could even really begin. Now on paper, if you look at Watt Misaka's 3-game tenure in pro basketball, the statistics may be a little underwhelming. However, statistics don't tell the entire story. Statistics can't measure heart. Statistics can't measure work ethic. Statistics can't measure inspiration. But if they could, Watt would for sure be on the all-time leaderboards. It's not uncommon for athletes to feel lost when their pro careers are over, and unfortunately in some cases this leads to a not so happy ending for them. But that wasn't the case for Watt, despite how brief and maybe unfair his tenure was in pro basketball because of the state of the country at the time. Watt actually looked at the end of his basketball career as an opportunity for a new beginning, a new chapter. After basketball, he had a successful career as an engineer. He became a champion bowler. He raised a family, lived a normal life, became beloved by his Utah community. Watt lived a life in a way that only Watt could. He experienced things that many will never experience. Author Michael Singer once said, "What gives life meaning is the willingness to live it." And for 95 years, Wataru Misaka did just that. At the end of the day, when it boils down to it, it's not about the sport. It's not even about the athlete. It's about the person. And Wataru Misaka sure was an extraordinary one. This is John Lee Brody for NextShark Sports. See you next time.